Hello and welcome to the call to action meeting for the formation of the Interpreting Safe AI Task Force. My name is Winnie Hay and I will be the moderator for today's event. Today's meeting will last about an hour. We will start with a poll to get a sense of the representation of the audience. I will then provide a brief overview of what brought this initial work group together and how we envision the proposed task force to contribute to the interpretation field in the evolving AI world. Several stakeholders will share their perspectives on this important work. We will then share with you 2 surveys that we are proposing to launch to inform and guide our future work. Also, we'll share with you how you can get involved. And we're heartened to see the interest in this issue, and we hope after today's meeting, you will join our efforts. I would now like to turn the floor over to Eliana Lobo to help us with the audience poll.
Hey, y'all, there's 4 questions on this poll, and I'm going to launch. And the first one is geographical. Are you based here in the US, in Canada, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, or Oceania? And this should be a pretty quick one to answer. The question is, which stakeholder groups do you represent? Interpreters of spoken language, interpreters for the deaf and hard of hearing, vendors of interpreting services, interpreter educators, buyers of interpreting services, experts in research and AI technologies for interpreting, or experts in accessibility, for example, open captioning, or consumers/end users of interpreting services. And the third question is, what specialization best describes your stakeholder group? Conference interpreting, court and legal interpreting, healthcare medical interpreting, interpreting in education, interpreting for the deaf and hard of hearing in any setting, all of the above, or other. And the last question, do you feel there needs to be some regulation or shuns about the use of artificial intelligence in the context of providing interpretation? And that's a yes, I'm not sure, or no option for you. Most of our attendees are based here in the US, but second place, Europe. The predominant group in our audience is interpreters of spoken languages, followed in second place by vendors, and then third place, interpreter educators. And specialization, largest group is healthcare. And then all of the above is in second place, followed by conference interpreting, then court, and finally interpreting in education. And a whopping 84% are saying, yes, we feel that there's a need to be some sort of regulation, guideline, guardrail, whatever you want to call it, in this brave new world. So thanks for being here, everyone, today.
Thank you so much, Eliana. So now I would like to talk a little bit about the vision of the work group. AI is undeniably visible and impactful in many aspects of our personal and professional lives. As the impact of the technology is felt, it is incumbent upon the experts and stakeholders in any given field to guide and manage the technology. After all, technology should be used for the benefit of the society, not the other way around. And it is no different for the interpretation field, where, as we know, the stakes can be high, from national security to the health and safety of human lives. It was in this context that the group of stakeholders came together to form this initial work group. And today is our opportunity to ask you to join us. we're proposing to form a task force. To be clear, we are not the task force. The role of the task force is to establish guidelines and to disseminate and promote guidelines for the responsible adoption of AI in interpretation. In today's call, we are going to walk you through the process we're envisioning that will result in the publication of best practice recommendations in fall of this year, 2023. The most important message today is that the success of this effort requires the participation of as many stakeholders as possible. There will be many different ways for you to be involved, and we will explain in today's presentation. As I explained in the previous slide, the function of this work group is to take us to the formation of the task force. And you may wonder, out of the tens of thousands of practitioners and stakeholders in interpretation, why these 11 individuals form this work group. Actually, this work group was formed rather organically in the last month as we individually track AI development and have discussions among ourselves. And we came to the recognition that the voice of the language stakeholders need to inform the field as we shape the future with AI in mind. And so now I would like to invite some of our members to share their perspectives on this important work. First up is Natalia Mitareva. Please, Natalia.
Thank you. Interpreters are and should be paying attention to the expanding use of AI in human communication. Interpreters, as communication facilitators, possess subject matter expertise in this area. We know how complex and nuanced human speech and language are. We cannot afford to ignore technological progress or to let the tech industry to be the sole driving force behind it. Interpreters should actively participate in shaping it. Especially in healthcare interpreting, human lives, dignity, and civil rights are at stake. We must educate end users and consumers of our services about the limitations and potential dangers of using AI in human communication. Yet, at the same time, we need to identify the benefits that AI can bring to our profession, where it can improve efficiency and accuracy. Both CCHI, the Certification Commission for Healthcare Interpreters, as a national certification body that sets the interpreting standards for medical interpreters, and NCIHC, National Council on Interpreting and Healthcare, as an inter-stakeholder group representing the healthcare interpreting sector, strongly support the need for establishing guidelines and regulations for a safe and responsible use of AI in interpreting.
Thank you, Natalia. Now, Cody Francisco.
Something that's always seemed an impossibility for the deaf community are AI sign language interpreters. Sign language is such a complex language. There's been a firm belief that nothing can be done to replace a real-life interpreter. However, the technology has progressed and offers real potential for wider use of signing avatars. These products do not surpass the natural quality and skill of appropriately trained and qualified interpreters. Individuals who are fluent in sign language not only use the hands, arms, shoulders, and torso, movements of the head, facial expression, and mouth patterns, but also include cultural information where necessary to convey the intended meaning contained within a message. But AI has already had a substantial impact on sign language interpretation. It has a potential to completely transform the profession in the near future. These developments may have an upside, leading to new opportunities for deaf people in employment, accessing hearing culture, and new social possibilities. But they also lead to a downside. The deaf community has already changed a lot in our lifetime. With more and more deaf clubs and schools closing, and a feeling like the community is more disconnected since the rise of video relay interpreting, mobile phones, and social media. So as AI replaces the need for as much human interaction and interpreters, will deaf people, the deaf community, and sign language continue to exist? The development of AI will inevitably have a big impact on the community and the culture that is born out of the experience of deafness rather than national identity. So it does deserve close scrutiny and careful adoption. Yes, so the development of AI that will inevitably be a big impact on the community and culture that is born out of the common experience of deafness rather than a national identity. So it deserves close scrutiny and careful adoption. It is that for that reason that I support the establishment of the Interpreting Safe AI Task Force.
Thank you so much, Cody. Mila?
It's a great pleasure to be part of this initial effort, and I'd like to offer 3 thoughts to the group from the perspective of language service companies. One is we absolutely need guidelines. From the perspective of language service providers, we need to present unified, and I want to underline unified messaging to our clients as to when it's appropriate to use AI and when AI inaccuracy can lead to adverse outcomes. We do so by establishing guidelines. And as an example, on the translation side, the concept of translation grades or service levels and service types is now in the 2023 edition of the ASTM F2575 guidelines. This approach allows us to engage clients in conversations about quality and risks prior to the start of the project, which leads to smart choices on when to use AI and when to rely on human subject matter experts. We need to have similar guidelines for interpreting. 2, we need to leverage technology. The technology is here to stay and can help us improve efficiency and quality of our services. We as a language industry need to collaborate and work together and leverage technology to advance language access. 3, the language industry has the potential to use AI to improve the lives of billions of people. Advancements in AI will create new opportunities for speakers of marginalized languages who at this time are not part of the global digital economy. 3 billion people today do not have any access to the internet, and only a handful of the 7,000 spoken languages have digital presence. This means that 40% of the global population have inferior access to information than the rest of us. Enhancing access to digital information through AI will create new business opportunities for language service providers and language professionals at large. Ultimately, it is the language professionals and language companies that can create true equity of information access for all. And together, we can make a difference.
Thank you, Mila. Next up, Catherine Allen.
Hi, everybody. I have many hats in this ring, but I'm speaking today from the educator and trainer's perspective. I see this generation of all these new IA tools as having a profound impact on interpreter education and our ongoing professional development. On the positive side, I think it's going to supercharge our ability to generate training materials, especially multilingual materials in so many languages that we don't typically get material creation. It's going to help us create exercises and role plays and scenarios and glossaries, right? And that's just to start. I think we're just beginning to play with these tools and understand how they work. They're going to help interpreters interpret while they interpret, which is going to be a whole new skill set. So that's going to create an immediate challenge and need for us as trainers to learn how to train it and for interpreters to learn how to use these new tools, right? So I think we've already seen interpreters playing around with automated captioning to support their memory or production while interpreting. And so I have a lot of thoughts as a trainer about how do we break down the cognitive steps to help interpreters learn to do that. And this just represents a gigantic sea change in terms of how training is going to happen across the board. And on the negative side, of course, if we don't get a handle on it, this is going to pose immediate threats to determining whether and how students are doing their own work or using these tools appropriate. And I think even more importantly, it's going to pose a lot of new ethical challenges with our current codes of ethics, how we train our codes of ethics, how we address the use of AI as an interpreter. Education is slow to respond, and I'm worried about how quickly these changes will come in. And want us to get on top of it. So I play a lot of roles in the profession. I play a lot of stakeholder roles, but fundamentally I'm an interpreter, and I have so much love for the nuanced, complex, essential work we do to help others communicate. So I want to be a proactive player in helping our profession embrace and channel AI.
Thank you, Catherine. And next up, Bill Rivers.
Hi, I'm really extremely happy to see so many people and the diversity of stakeholders and languages and perspectives represented here. I come at this as a former interpreter, Russian English-Russian conference interpreter way back when at the closing of the Cold War. I've been in this space for 30 years. I don't like to do the math because that's kind of painful. But my role now in the profession and the industry is to work with the federal government in the United States about working on issues of regulation in particular as it concerns AI and interpreting. The US Congress and multiple departments are looking at either legislation or regulation around the topic of AI generally, and in some cases specifically about language access and generative AI. It's really incumbent on us as a profession, as an industry, to get our ideas and our sensibilities out there as soon as possible so that other people don't start making assumptions. Cody talked about avatars, and he talked about the potential for avatars in ASL. But, if you look at Barry Olson's recent video on wired.com, where they compare conference interpreting to AI generated interpreting, and there's, it's interesting. I have some opinions. I don't want to share them here. It's a little weird. There's an issue of accuracy and, okay, humans make errors too, but we tend to recognize when we have made errors. The AI is neither it's created by people, it's not artificial, and it's not intelligent. And some things that, Ludmila and Natalia talked about, Catherine talked about in terms of training, in terms of user expectations, where we're already seeing healthcare systems say, hey, why can't we use this? It's free. It produces comprehensible, fluent output, and you have to say, well, wait a minute. It's designed to produce comprehensible, fluent output. It's not necessarily designed to be accurate. And the algorithms will provide a prediction of the next string of text, no matter whether that string of text is accurate or not. And that then matters. That matters for language access in healthcare, and it really in the US context, which I care about very much, and which I work on at the federal level. Anywhere where life, health, liberty, property, benefits, or rights are concerned, we have a very important role to play in saying where AI might be appropriate, where it might not, and where the boundaries are for that, where humans have to be in the loop, or where it's more appropriate for human interpreters and translators to be engaged. So I know I've gone over my time, but this is so important, and I get, multiple times a week, I get calls from Capitol Hill or from different executive branch agencies saying, hey, what do your folks think about this? And I say, we got some thoughts, but we need to really come together as a group and put those thoughts down and get them into the public square in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. And next up is Barry Olson. Barry is interpreting in a conference today, so he cannot join us, but he recorded a message, which I'm going to play now.
Thank you for joining the Safe AI Call to Action meeting today. And I'm sorry I can't be with you. As you have heard from Natalia, Mila, Catherine, Bill, and others, artificial intelligence is and will continue to have an effect on multilingual communication and interpreting. We must understand and be able to clearly explain its potential, limitations, and the risks associated with its use. AI should be seen as an opportunity to expand access to cross-language communication, as a tool that should be used properly. To do this, we must come together, not to close ranks or to take a defensive position, but to build a unified, authoritative voice on the use of AI in cross-language communication, the area where we are experts. The unified voice should be heard by lawmakers and end users of language services. And as Bill explained, they are open to hearing from us now. The window of opportunity is open, but it will only be for a short time. So we must act now. I urge all of you to participate in the surveys that you will learn about shortly. And I encourage you to get involved in the Safe AI Task Force in whatever form it may take. We need to go beyond the headlines and the hype and provide reliable, detailed, and constructive guidance to ensure that language access expands without undermining quality through misunderstanding or misapplication of what is a very powerful tool. As I said in a recent interview with Wired, if we are able to understand the power of this tool, we can respect it and use it to everyone's benefit.
Thank you, Barry. And at this point, we've shared with you who we are and what we're seeking to accomplish. And as several of our members have emphasized, we need to act now. So what's next? Now I'd like to invite Catherine Allen to walk us through what we're trying to accomplish through survey number 1. Catherine?
I'm here. There we go. There's my video. So we have talked a little bit about our overall passion and why we're envisioning this task force. And I'm going to spend a few minutes and walk us through the proposed way we hope to move forward that will allow us to move forward very quickly. So the overall goals of this launch meeting and in trying to create a task force is really one, to select a task force structure, to identify task force participants, and to identify outcomes. And we hope to do this through everybody filling out a survey, which we have created, which we will share out at the end of this session. But just to give a little bit of framing, Winnie touched upon it at the beginning. This initial launch group is not meant to be the task force. This is how anything starts in this field. There's a group of people who get worried enough that they say, hey, let's do something about it. And I know that the 11 people that came together to pull together this meeting are just a tiny drop in the bucket of all of you and our colleagues who are worried enough to do something about this. So we're just hoping to be an initial vehicle to get something going and provide enough structure, enough of a proposal for how we could move forward with a draft version perhaps, and then get everybody involved who wants to be involved. So I just wanted to sort of clarify that our goal is to actually work with everybody here and the people who respond who can't attend today to raise your hand to be part of a task force and to do the initial work. So go ahead and to the next slide, Winnie. So I'm just going to share a few screenshots of the survey that we've put together. So many of us have been involved in working in the creation of different kinds of organizations in our profession, whether it's a professional association or some kind of other group or entity. And we all know that the most time-consuming and difficult part of that is actually just standing up the group and deciding what structure. So we'd like to jumpstart that a little bit. And so you'll see that in this survey, the first thing that we're asking about is what structure should it have? And we've put together 3 suggestions and then given an other so people can put in their ideas. But the idea would be that we can see if there's a majority who want one of these options, and the options would be either a standalone steering committee, which would just mean one group, which could would be very large group trying to work together, a steering committee that would be more of an executive committee with subcommittees, and a steering group committee with subcommittees, and a supporter category so that people who want to be able to follow what's happening and provide input can, but would not be raising their hand for the committee work. And of course, we've left ample room for people to share their structure. So the first thing we're going to try and get from those who are interested, and we're presuming everybody here is interested on some level, you wouldn't be here, would to be get that initial guidance on how we should structure this group. And the group is not attached to anything. This is a standalone work group task force that's about, not linked to any currently existing group. Go ahead, Winnie. And then the other thing, there's more questions than what I'm showing on the screen here, but we have a series of questions where we're seeking to identify task force participants, right? And so we've come up with initial list of core stakeholder groups. And of course, this list will by no means be comprehensive. So of course we have the other there, right? But we're trying to just give it enough framing so people can identify where they identify the most and tell us that, and also put an other if none of these categories apply. But we want to know, who do you think should be represented in the interpreting task force? And we also have questions about which stakeholder groups you feel that you belong to. And then we have a question about how can we make this effort as inclusive as possible. We've had some questions already in the question and answer about how, bias in questions and all the rest of it. So that's this definitely providing places for you to provide that kind of input. And then if you decided that you wanted to participate in this task force, then you can put your name and your email address and indicate which role or roles you might be most interested in playing. And it is the people who fill out this question 12 who will be getting the follow-up emails to attend the first meeting and to roll up sleeves and get to work as quickly as possible. Go ahead, Winnie. And then the final part that we've tried to create sort of an initial structure or suggestion for is identifying outcomes. And, to repeat, the process that we're hoping to go through between now and October, and this is sort of an unprecedentedly quick proposal to put something out there, is that the first work of this task force would be to create a survey, and then that would survey the field. And Elaine's going to talk about this in much more detail in just a minute, but create a survey that would allow us to survey what is currently happening, what people's best practices suggestions are, what we see as risks, and then put out, a report on that survey by October, so that our field can have some kind of initial guidance from industry players about how we should be handling the very rapid adoption of AI. So you'll see that we've put together some immediate goals, suggestions, how important are the following outcomes. And these are some of the outcomes that this group sort of felt were important outcomes. And they include publishing that best practices document, promoting them, updating and maintaining them. Maybe we want to do lobbying efforts or not. How can we expand this so that it becomes an international group that really captures the whole industry, et cetera. And then of course there will be space for you to propose your own outcomes as well. So that's basically the survey that we've put together as the initial work of this 11. In addition to wanting to launch the task force, we've also created this survey to try and help provide immediate guidance so we can produce initial guidelines very quickly. And I think that wraps me up, right, Winnie? I mean, this is a proposal, and this will be the survey that we'll be sharing out as soon as this meeting is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And so survey 1 is already live. Natalia is going to provide the link to survey 1 in chat. Then now we go to survey 2. Survey 2 will be the work that's going to be done by the task force. And its structure and membership will be informed by survey 1. And Eileen Pierre will walk us through our best thinking at this point in terms of survey 2. Eileen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Winnie. So the second survey that the task force will complete will be an extensive study on use cases for AI in interpreting. What we want to be able to provide are clear, easy to use guidelines to educate buyers so they don't get tangled in decisions that end up backfiring. So in some cases, AI can do a fantastic job, but in others, it falls short. So our job will be to delineate what those boundaries are so decision makers can rely on them to make safe and ethical decisions. Now, although the task force will focus on interpreting, as of now, we plan to collect data on related services too, including AI-delivered captioning, subtitling, and transcription. And if you can move to the next slide, thank you. So to develop guidelines, the task force is planning on running an in-depth survey. This will be an area of opportunity where volunteers can help craft strong questions. We'll also need help disseminating the survey to various audiences and analyzing the findings. And whatever the structure of the task force will take based on those questions that Catherine was just showing you, there should be opportunities to contribute on some level. And then CSA Research was asked to help lead the survey and data analysis effort to ensure that the task force follows research best practices. So for governmental organizations and buyers of language services to rely on the guidelines, it's really essential that we collect good and unbiased data and that we analyze the findings objectively. And next slide, please. So we plan to survey different audiences because they'll have different perspectives. So think interpreters, of course, you're crucial to this, but also buyers of language services, and users of interpreting services, the AI vendors themselves. So a lot of different audiences, and collecting these various perspectives will help us paint an accurate picture of both good and bad practices in the market. And we also want to achieve a representative sample of people in different sectors. So think legal, healthcare, government, etc. And in order for us to succeed, we'll need your help to promote the survey to your network so that we collect enough data on each of these different focus areas of interpreting. Now, also because the original focus of the task force was the US market, we'll actively recruit respondents in this geography, but if you help us, we should be able to get responses from all over the world. And if we're able to do that, we're going to be able to contrast answers by geography too for this study. And next slide. So it's premature really for me to tell you the exact content of the survey because we don't have the structure of the organization clarified, and that's where a lot of the volunteering work will come in to really shape the survey. But kind of to give you an idea directionally at this point, here's what we're thinking of right now in terms of the line of questioning. Questions on the degree of experience with AI, questions on perceived benefits and drawbacks of using AI. We really want to nail down the criteria on whether it's safe to use AI and when it is not safe. And then we want this data on safe usage by sector. That's the end goal we really would like to try to achieve. Ultimately, we want to build a really strong survey tool that captures what is in the best interest of the end users of language services, because that is really the driver behind the initiative, ensuring that they get the best service possible so that their needs are met.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you. And at this point, Eliana Lobo will walk us through the specific actions and next steps.
Hi, everybody. So happy to see so many people on the call. And yes, this is being recorded and it will be uploaded and available for all of you that had to leave early or who are joining on your phone and can't see the spotlighted interpreter. It's available to you. So let's just quickly go over some of what we've covered here today, because this is just ringing the doorbell and opening the door to a lot of possibilities that can only happen and become reality if we get the hands, the bodies, and the minds on board to help us roll out this effort. So each of the folks that have spoken from all areas in the world of language access, we've covered a lot about the vision and the goals for this Interpreting Safe AI Task Force, but it's up to all of you to help spread the word and get us the energy that we need to launch this initiative. We encourage everybody who's on this call today to help support us through the next steps. So very first thing, please fill out the survey and consider participating in whichever way best fits your interests. And I've already seen in the chat people asking if they can share the survey link. Yes, they can share the survey link, right? We want as many responses as possible. Winnie is sharing the survey link again right now, or maybe Natalia is. It's been popping up throughout, and we'll be also sending the survey out via a follow-up email along with the slide deck to all who have registered for today's event. And this survey will stay open until July 15th. After the survey, what happens? Well, next, after you've submitted the survey, I just did mine today, you need to share that link, get it out and ask people to share that link with their colleagues. Remember that old ad? They'll tell two friends and then they'll tell two friends and then they'll tell two friends. It's how the word gets out. It's like ripples in a pond. We want a broad, deep representation from the profession to form this group. I mean, it's our opportunity to get invited early at the beginning rather than, I'm actually having to admit that I am tired of having language access being thought of as an afterthought. After the system has been built, after the programming has been put in place, after the epic upgrade, it's like, oh yeah, we do have to figure out something for where to schedule interpreters. No, let's sit at the table now. Let's get the input now. Let's give the feedback now, and then help design a system that works better for everyone that needs to use it. So, survey in. Tell your friends, more people take the survey. After July 15th, the survey results will be analyzed and shared out. And those who indicated their interest in being part of the task force will be invited to the first official meeting of the Interpreting Safe AI Task Force. Happens in late July. As we hope this meeting has communicated to all of you here today, we have a very short window of time to be proactive participants in how AI will be adopted in interpreting. Let's do what we can. Let's jump in and do what we can to influence its rollout to our benefit, to the benefit of the people who need language access. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.
Thank you, Eliana. And so now we have some time for Q&A. I am going to stop sharing the PowerPoint, and I would like to ask the work group members to start your video. And Catherine, you have been monitoring the Q&A and the discussions. Are there any questions you'd like any one of us to address?
Yeah, we've actually been able to answer all of the Q&As that have come through, but if people have, wondering if the survey has already been translated into other languages, we just got that question. It has not yet been translated, and I will, let me have Elaine maybe address that. But overall, please put in any, we have, 20 minutes, 15 minutes to do a Q&A. So if you've got immediate questions, we can answer them live now. And I'm going to throw that first one to Elaine in terms of the translation.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to get a volunteer to translate, and then another one to proofread, and then we can upload translated versions of the survey along within the same one. So this is perfect opportunity for the first volunteer to fill out the survey and say, I can translate the very first survey right now. And when we come up with a larger survey later, there will be lots of translation opportunities, especially if we want to go global.
I have a question to Alan Melby, if he can give us a very brief introduction on what is that concept of service levels and service types and how it is addressed in translation industry.
Thank you. I just unmuted. Can you hear me, Winnie? Yes, good. So I just came about a week ago from Brussels, where we had meetings about the update of the ISO General Translation Standard. It has a number you're not interested in, 11669. And it involved a in-depth discussion of service levels. The recognition is that when you identify a use case, we've talked about these use cases, each use case deserves a risk assessment. And we've talked about risk as well, but this is formalizing all this. Once you've conducted a risk assessment, you can then identify a service level that is appropriate for that use case. And as much as we would all like to have all in-person professional interpreting for all use cases all the time, there's an implicit recognition that there are some use cases where AI will not present excessive or unacceptable risk in a realistic world. And this helps, this notion of service level tied to a risk assessment helps us formalize an action for the relationship, the discussion between the requester and the provider of services. That's very, very brief, but it's a starting point. Maybe that will lead to questions.
And thank you, Alan. We had some great questions roll in. Winnie, shall I just kind of run through and then
Yes,
toss
please.
to those people who
Yes,
should answer them?
please.
So we have a question: who's going to vet the survey responses, and will the responses be made transparent, available? I think that's all going to be worked out through initially through the task force and the people who raise their hand to work on the survey, and then you know, I mean, Elaine, if you want to add to it, I would imagine that they will be made transparently available to those in the work group, and then put together in the report. But do you have an answer, Elaine, that's less
Yes.
bumbling than mine?
So the data collection is going to be anonymized. So only the people in the initial task force will see who said what in terms of volunteering, and the group members need to see that so that then we can start assigning volunteers to different tasks. But otherwise, we're only going to show results in aggregate in terms of telling you what is the recommended structure based on the survey from the different respondents, that nobody will see what you responded. It's a private answer.
And then I would say it'd be something similar with the second one as well. The people working on the survey would see the anonymized, right? It's going to be anonymized. This isn't going to be a.
Correct. And for the second survey, it will probably just be CSA research who sees who said what, and we only provide aggregated results even to the rest of the group members, because we're going to get much deeper into very specific questions for the different stakeholders we'll be interviewing.
Thank you.
Survey, sorry.
Then another really great comment is about one constituent that I see missing are students and younger and newer interpreters, and that they're always missing in these discussions. And you're correct, it's very hard to get that group in. And so my personal answer to that would be, this survey is an opportunity, if we disseminate it correctly and get it to our contacts to not just the academic institutions that have programs like, you know, Monterey Institute or the UMass, you know, all the certificate programs in translation and interpreting, but also just to trainers and the training companies and the people who touch a lot of interpreters who are students in the short course training. We have an opportunity to seek that input and seek that participation. And I hope it's a good note to really make sure we do that.
Also, Catherine, I'd like to add that if the participants in this call, you personally know of any students who want to be involved even more and be part of the task force, please encourage them to reach out and be part of it.
Yeah, that is the fundamental goal of the way we call this out. You know, it might become unwieldy if we, you know, however many people come in, but it's like, for me personally, I want as broad a representation as possible, including the group end users who also get left out and they're hard to get on. So lots of things to talk about along those lines of how you create that inclusion, you know, for end users. And then in all the other groups, I mean, there's clearly many groups on our stakeholder list that aren't included in the bullet points yet. We have, when is AI supposed to roll out? I'm just going to answer that. Anybody else can jump into. I would say it is already rolled out in significant ways in certain areas of the broad language services industry, and in interpreting, you are already seeing application of completely AI generated interpreters working in simultaneous interpreting in some settings, and as well as the live captioning and the many ways that AI is being used to support. For example, maybe you don't have an interpreter, you just have multilingual captioning, and it's automatic and AI based, and so you bypass the interpreter altogether. So AI is rolled out in many ways. It's also being rolled out in supportive ways with tools to help interpreters become more productive and to, improve their performance. So it's here already. It's just that for those of you who have yet to play with ChatGPT or any of the chat bots, just go get a free account and start playing with it, and you'll begin to understand why we're in a game-changing moment. It's like this has been brewing, but the advent of these new ChatGPT technologies have really changed things quickly, because the way they can generate content, by putting together patterns and then coming up with something that whether may not be new, but it is generative. And that's my very non-techie answer. So does anybody want to add anything to that question? Okay, let's see, we've got, what time commitment do you envision for task force members? I think that's, let's see. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to describe. In terms of AI's effects on the profession of sign language interpreting, could Cody elaborate on how specifically AI has already had a significant impact? So Cody, it would be wonderful if you could answer that question. And we'd have to spotlight him, right? There we go. There we go.
You see me?
Yep.
AI is now in a lot of different university already making hands that'll copy signs and all that. I've already seen where they use AI for an airport, and when you're communicating with travel or front desk, how do you find the locations? Or sometimes when you go to conferences, like I remember one time I went to South by Southwest conference. They had a hologram interpreter that actually started signing. It was interesting to see how they're spreading the use of at least holographic commercial interpreters for communications. Also, we have a group of people out there that are actually trying to develop the use of glasses that have AI interpreters in there, so you can see them through the glasses. So the deaf person would sit in a classroom, they see the sign language interpreter or some kind of avatar in the screen on the glasses signing, or maybe most recently you could buy a new TV. They actually have avatar on the lower corner of the screen signing on everything, like the news and everything on there. So more and more people are becoming creative in how they provide communication access with AI, and it's becoming more and more of a concern with specifically education and healthcare, those specific fields.
Thank you so much for that. I just find it fascinating and kind of mind-blowing at the same time, right? So we'll go through, we have time to go through a few more of these questions. What time commitment do you envision for task force members? I think that will be largely up to the people who sign up and how the structure is created. So I imagine there'll be some roles that are less time and other roles that are more time. So we don't have any answer to that question, right? But it would definitely have to be what you could provide, not, in the end, and you would have to decide whether a role was too time intensive or not. We had several people ask about, does this effort include translation? And the answer is no. This is really a group of people who are focused on interpreting. There's so many more entities who are tracking this immediate introduction of AI already, including producing research and testing all these large language models. And if you just dip in on LinkedIn and start looking at how many weekly webinars there are and how many news articles there are that are tracking what's happening in translation and localization, you can get a good idea. I think a task force might be great, but our vision is that this is focused on interpreting, because interpreting just doesn't have that kind of resource, and it doesn't have that kind of, we've just never been able to garner a unified response in such a way that it might have an impact. And while we can't do anything prescriptive, we can't pass a law, we can put out a solid best practices recommendation, risk case use kind of guideline that I think will make a difference. So, but it's meant just for interpreting. And jump in to anybody, let's see. Will the task force be incorporated as a nonprofit? That will be up to the task force. So that we have envisioned the initial project, and then as this evolves, we'll see if it sustains itself as an organization and in what shape. And then we have some comments as well. If you manage a blog or website, can you publish this call to action via YouTube, etc.? I don't know, Mila, if you, I think that I know this group of 11, I suspect some of the work we'll be doing in the next month as the survey is open is to just put together a basic informational infrastructure beyond what we've done so far. But Mila, did you want to answer that since you've done so much supporting of it?
Well, in terms of informational infrastructure, I think all of this will need to be determined by the group.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. I think the most important thing is that the group is truly neutral, that it represents the interest of all the stakeholders. The group functions as its own, provides recommendations as a group, and that we involve all the stakeholders. I think this is the first time in the history of our field where we have sign language interpreters, conference interpreters, healthcare interpreters, judicial interpreters in education, all groups of interpreters at the same table. And I think this group has power. I think it's important that we also communicate and collaborate and have a unified message with our colleagues in Asia and Europe and Australia and around the world. So that's going to be very, very key.
Catherine, I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Yep. We have a couple.
Up.
Yeah, the last two kind of are, do we have any one on the panel who's a technical expert in AI, or, you know, and will AI developers be added? I mean, that is certainly the hope, that we will have good, solid representation in this group. Again, the initial 11 is that just a group wanting to start something. It's not meant as a fully it's clearly not a fully representative stakeholder group by any means. And I've seen some comments in the chat as well, you know, around why you mentioning ChatGPT, it doesn't do live interpretation, et cetera. And it's like, yeah, no, of course not. But the ChatGPT and the chat bots, they present the ability, I mean, we are already seeing the way that is impacting interpreting, not in terms of live interpreting, but one, from what the kinds of materials you can create from it, but also the way that healthcare providers are immediately using them. So, you know, one example of that is healthcare providers who are using ChatGPT to generate information in other languages, and then what did the interpreters do with that, right? So when I mentioned that I see immediate ethical challenges to our current ethical structure, like there's just so many ways it's like a spider web coming in on so many different levels. So that's what we're going to try and capture with this survey. And yes, gosh, I certainly hope, you know, we're going to work really hard to get developers on this task force.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, wait, let's see. Oh, and then we do have a very good, interesting comment about the word safe with AI that we'll definitely capture, and whether it's safe AI or ethical AI, you know, whether the task force might want to change its name. And so we'll definitely capture that comment and have it be, I would like to see that be put out as part of the initial meeting, right? The task force can, probably one of the first questions will be, do we keep our name or do we change our name, right?
I also see the why are healthcare providers not represented. If you have a language access champion that you know of, please invite them to participate. We all know the doctors that get it. So please bring them into the conversation. We are not trying to exclude anyone.
Just share it out. Again, I know it's hard it's easy to look at this group and say, oh, that's the task force. We're not the task force. We're like that group that first started NCIHC or the AAITE, which is the new professional association in interpreting and for interpreters and translators in education. It was just a group of people who started talking and saying it's time to do something. But, you know, the people who are on the board of that organization aren't the people who started the organization. We're just trying to be the spark.
I think it's very important that we invite educators, people who are on the client side of education, on the client side of the courts and legal profession, on the client side of hospitals and healthcare profession. That is going to make the recommendations of this group even so more powerful and listened to.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And I love the word that Catherine chose to describe this work group, the spark. As we wrap up this meeting, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Sparks who started this effort, and also thank the participants, all of you who are dialing from all over the world that are interested in this issue. And as I listened to all the speakers, the one word that really stood out to me, and the word is now. Okay, there's no time to wait. We need to act now. We need to research now, and we need to provide the guidelines now. So we really, really sincerely invite you to be part of this effort. And if you see any gap in expertise or in knowledge, please bring in the stakeholders and the people who are interested to help us with shaping the future of interpretation. With that, thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you.